Thanks for tuning in to an NFL Draft Recap edition of the Football Game Tonight podcast. I'm your host, John Kuzma, and in this latest edition, we're going to talk about the Travis Hunter story. So Travis Hunter is creating all the buzz in the world right now. Everybody wants to hear about how the Jaguars traded up to the second overall pick, then took Travis Hunter in the NFL Draft. So Travis Hunter, we all know who he is going back to his time at Colorado and Jackson State. This guy is a sensational athlete that plays both sides of the ball, plays wide receiver on offense, plays cornerback on defense. So early reports coming out of Jacksonville are that the Jaguars want to use Travis Hunter primarily on offense at the wide receiver position. Then they plan on sneaking him into some defensive meetings to play cornerback. So primarily he will be used as a wide receiver, then a little bit he'll be used as cornerback. But the Jaguars are thinking offense right now when it comes to Travis Hunter, which isn't too surprising. He's a really good athlete on the offensive side of the ball, really good at getting in and out of his breaks. We all know what he did at Colorado with Shedeur Sanders and how big he was for that offense. I always think about him running the goal line fade down on the red zone. Even with the defender in tight coverage, he still finds a way to come down with the football. So the Jaguars are looking at, him, Brian Thomas, they got Trevor Lawrence there on that offense. They have the weapons on that offense to succeed and just be a really good team for years to come on that offense. That's why they make that trade to move up. And I know the Jaguars have struggled, over the past, 5-10 years or so. But, you get a generational talent like a Travis Hunter on the offensive side of the ball. You have a Brian Thomas. You have a Trevor Lawrence. And suddenly the pieces of the puzzle, at least on the offensive side of the ball, are starting to come together for the Jaguars. So we might see an offense that can uplift this team out of the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the NFL power rankings. I think Travis Hunter is that guy. If you are going to give up 2026 first round pick, an extra second round pick, the other draft capital that they gave up, you got to be certain. And one of the guys in this draft that you can be absolutely certain about is obviously Travis Hunter. The guy is the real deal. The guy is going to live up to the hype and be one of the best prospects we've ever seen coming out of the NFL draft. And I can't wait to see his jump to the big leagues, because I think he's going to be the same player that he's always been in high school, college, and now at the professional level. I don't see it skipping a beat just because the guy is so talented. The ability to always come down with the football, the shiftiness in his route, setting you up one way like you're going to do one thing, but really selling it hard so the defender gets confused when he breaks it off the exact opposite way. You got to have a little bit of deception in your route running, and I think Travis Hunter can do those things particularly well, which is what the Jaguars foresaw when they took him in this draft. They weren't content with sitting there and waiting for him to fall, because that wasn't going to happen. Someone was going to take him, whether it was the Browns or the Giants or the Patriots. It wasn't going to happen. They knew they had to be aggressive and pursue a trade to get Travis Hunter, which I have to applaud the Jaguars for, because when you have this player that can, transcend an organization and be this global brand, be the icon that Travis Hunter already is because the success he's had up to this point in his life, you can't just wait around for a player like that to fall to you. Like the Jaguars would have had to do if they didn't trade up. That wasn't going to work. So they decide, hey, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to go get this guy. We're going to pay extra. And guess what? You can reach a little bit by overpaying if you know you're going to hit on that pick. I'm not saying Travis Hunter's a reach, but some people might say, hey, giving up a 2026 first, giving up the second round pick, giving up the extra draft capital they gave up, maybe they are giving up a little bit too much for Travis Hunter. I'm here to say no way, not true, absolutely not. I am 100% positive that this was a great decision for the Jaguars organization because remember, this has been a team that's been searching for answers. This has been a team that's looking for an offensive identity, and it's not just Travis Hunter's fate that's tied to this team going forward. It's also Trevor Lawrence's fate. We all know how talented Trevor Lawrence is. People are trying to write Trevor Lawrence off. I'm not buying into that. By getting Brian Thomas, by getting Travis Hunter, now you might be able to bring the best out of Trevor Lawrence. Remember when he got this team to the playoffs, had that win over the Chargers in the playoffs? You need the best out of Trevor Lawrence to, take this Jaguars team to that next level. I think Travis Hunter is going to be huge for Trevor Lawrence. So from that perspective, I'm also excited about the Jaguars trading up to get Travis Hunter. So all around, just a really good football decision. You build your team from the ground up by bringing in players that are blue chip prospects. Guys like Travis Hunter, Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas, all those guys that can really put their stamp on this football team and lead it into the future and build a brighter future for this team. If you don't have a key piece to the puzzle like a Travis Hunter, suddenly you remain at the bottom of those power rankings. You know, that 32, 31, 30, 29, 28 spot, which the Jaguars have found themselves in all too frequently. You can't stay in that same spot. That's a mess for this team. I think the front office realized that. They knew they had to get better. They knew they had to make a splash. The splash in this draft was Travis Hunter, a guy that on my big board easily could be that number one prospect in this whole entire draft. How can he not be after playing all those reps on both sides of the ball in college and just getting it done and having the impact that he did at the collegiate level? You're telling me that Travis Hunter isn't a guy that can step in for this Jaguars team and just keep doing the things that he's always done? I don't believe that. I believe he can get the job done for the Jaguars because he's not giving me any indication to prove otherwise. I believe this guy is going to be the same old Travis Hunter, a guy that's going to be a game breaker, the ultimate playmaker on both sides of the ball. Yeah, they're going to use him primarily on offense to help out Trevor Lawrence, to be opposite of Brian Thomas and just have the weapons all over the field, a high-flying offense that can put up a bunch of points. But in critical situations, you can throw him in at cornerback, and guess what? He can still break on a route. He can still jump a pass and create an interception, create turnovers for your team. That's why this guy is so valuable for a team like the Jaguars, because he can do everything, man. He can do everything, and he does everything exceptionally well. You can't pass on that in the NFL draft. And if you have the chance to trade up, you got to take that. The Jaguars realized that, pulled the trigger on that trade. I believe it's going to be a really good decision for years to come for this Jaguars team. On the opposite side of all this is the Browns. So the Browns are sitting in that number 2 spot overall last night. Travis Hunter's right there. Cam Ward goes number 1 to the Titans. Travis Hunter's right there. It's a no-brainer. You take Travis Hunter, you sleep well at night. Somehow the Browns decide we're going to get creative with it. We're going to get creative. We're going to think outside the box. We're going to do something different because we got a lot of holes to fill on this team, and we want to build it from the ground up and really establish a team that, can be a contender for a long time. They decide that the draft capital is more important or a better choice for this team than Travis Hunter. I don't know if that's the case. It's so easy to miss on these draft picks, and the majority of these draft picks are not going to turn into good players. So if you start missing on draft picks, even if you have more draft picks, you can easily just miss on them, and then you're out. You're out of all that talent that maybe you could have had if you would have just stuck to the players that are going to hit. In this particular case, it's just one player. It's Travis Hunter, a guy that you're going to hit on. I'm not subscribing to the belief that some people have that Travis Hunter's a miss. I don't believe that at all. I believe Travis Hunter is a generational player that could have changed the Browns into, a team that competes in that AFC North division. Remember, they're not that far away from being a good team, but they have some injuries, and I think about the Nick Chubb injury, how much of a catalyst he was for that team, and then he gets hurt. I really think that hurt that team. So you need someone that can step in and be a big spark plug for that team, how Nick Chubb was. I know Nick Chubb was a running back, and I know Travis Hunter would have been a wide receiver, but he could have been another catalyst for that Browns team that really allowed them to be explosive, just like Nick Chubb did when he came in for the Browns. So to pass on Travis Hunter, to decide, hey, we're going to move back and get the Jaguars pick, we're going to get an extra second-round pick, we're going to get a 2026 first-round pick next year. If they hit on those picks, then maybe, it ends up being a good decision for the Browns. But I don't know, man. Passing on Travis Hunter never feels like a smart football decision to me. You need players. Players ultimately win games in the National Football League. Talent trumps everything. You had a Sherlock generational talent in Travis Hunter. You decide to pass on him, and I guess the Browns, thinking was next year's draft is going to be even stronger than this draft. That's what they said. So they believe that maybe they can get better players next year with the 2 first-round picks in next year's draft. But I don't know, man. I think Travis Hunter was the right pick for the Browns. I think this is a decision that could end up haunting this franchise for years to come. I saw something online about how they, I think, passed on Julio Jones. I think they sent it back into the Falcons, those picks, that package. The Falcons ultimately got Julio Jones, and they do it again with Travis Hunter. I mean, those are decisions you just can't make. When you can get such a big-time player and just put him into your starting lineup and cause serious damage to these opposing defenses, how do you pass something like that up? You better nail these future draft picks, and they better be, I'm talking about blue chip, top tier talents, because that fan base is going to let you know. If Travis Hunter comes out there and starts balling out and going for touchdowns left and right, unstoppable, nobody can cover the guy, he just looks like an electric player that can't be stopped, the dog pound's going to just be furious at the front office. And suddenly, GM Barry's on the hot seat because you just can't make decisions like that. You can't make decisions like that in the draft. You can't make decisions like that when you have a whole team counting on you to get it right. All those players that compete, that go to practice every day, that lay it all on the line, their health, everything, they're trying to win, man. They're trying to win, and they're sacrificing so much to win those games. And when your front office doesn't put your team in a position to succeed, morale plummets fast, especially in the National Football League. Guys start checking out. They start realizing, hey, we can't win here. We want to go somewhere else. We demand a trade. We ask the team to cut us because they don't want to be there. They don't want to waste their time playing for a team that doesn't get it right upstairs. If Barry, would have took Travis Hunter, every single player on that roster right now would be energized right now. I just think it was a really bad decision because now people are second guessing the GM, the front office, the scouting department already, because it's like, you didn't get us Travis Hunter. You didn't give us Travis Hunter. You decided to trade down. You passed on a generational talent that could transform this team into a team that can go toe-to-toe with the Ravens in this division. That can, match Lamar Jackson's, we talk about being an electric player. You look at Lamar Jackson, an electric player. Travis Hunter would have added electric player to the Browns. So now you're fighting electricity with electricity. I know we usually say fire with fire, but you get what I'm saying. And now the players in that locker room, at least some players are like, man, we had a chance to get Travis Hunter and we didn't do that deal. We didn't pick Travis Hunter second overall. What are they doing up there? Did they watch football? Do they know how good of a player Travis Hunter is? I'm telling you right now, as soon as Travis Hunter gets picked and he walks out on stage, people in that locker room are energized because they know who Travis Hunter is. Football players are football fans. They watch the games. They watch Colorado. They know about Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, and Travis Hunter. They know that they put Colorado on the map. How do you pass on a player like that? That's a player that doesn't come along every so often. I'm sitting here wondering how the Titans passed on him. I know Cam Ward, quarterback position, most important position in football, a guy that goes number one. Titans believe the quarterback position comes first, and then they'll fill in the other pieces, but they need to get the quarterback right first because, Ryan Tannehill wasn't the guy. They had a good team there with Mike Vrabel, but Mike Vrabel didn't have a quarterback because Ryan Tannehill wasn't good enough. Now they think, hey, at least we got the quarterback position figured out. Him and Calvin Ridley can make some plays. But even the Titans, how do the Titans pass on a generational talent like Travis Hunter? Is that a smart move for the Titans? I don't know. I have serious doubts about passing on Travis Hunter because it's like, that's the guy is a lock. And you have to come away with players in these drafts. Those picks that you have to make them count. You need the best prospect available, the best player available. A guy that's going to come in right away, impact player, into the starting lineup, doesn't need years to develop. The best players usually don't need to sit for a while. A lot of times the best players can step on the field right away and you're just blown away by them because they're that damn good. Travis Hunter was that guy. So Titans, Browns, they might be regretting not taking Travis Hunter when they had the chance to do so. I promise you that. Moving on, we're going to talk about the Raiders. So the Raiders score a big victory last night by landing Ashton Jeanty. And I think this is a really good move for the Raiders because Pete Carroll took over this team. Tom Brady's a part of ownership. So obviously you look at the upper management level, the head coach, Tom Brady coming on as the owner. They're getting better upstairs. Pete Carroll is going to bring more stability to this team than Antonio Pierce did. I can promise you that just because, Antonio Pierce is a little green as a coach. His first coaching gig as a head coach with the full-time head coaching job for the Raiders. Where Pete Carroll, you look at him, USC, Seattle. I think he was the Patriots coach at one time. Now with the Raiders, he's polished as a head coach. You have Tom Brady coming in as an owner. He's going to bring his expertise to the table. So you have all this expertise upstairs with Tom Brady coming aboard, with Pete Carroll coming aboard. They're going to be a better run franchise because of those guys upstairs. They bring in Geno Smith as a quarterback. They think Geno Smith can kind of, stabilize things at the quarterback position until later on, until they have to draft a quarterback or find a different quarterback, which I agree because I watched Geno Smith in a few games last year. I watched him in the game against the Lions, throwing the ball all over the place. I mean, there was moments in time where you're like, this Seahawks team has a strength for them, and it's definitely Geno Smith because this guy is just chucking the football all over the place. He's got some arm talent. He can throw that thing. He can see the field. So I like Geno Smith coming aboard for the Raiders to stabilize the quarterback position. And, if we're talking about a bridge quarterback, a guy that bridges the situation until you find your franchise quarterback, whether it's a guy in the draft, someone you trade for, a free agent, whatever. I think as far as bridge quarterbacks go, Geno Smith, right now, the way he played this last year, really the last 2-3 years, I think he's one of the better bridge quarterbacks you can find. So if you add Ashton Jeanty to the mix, now you have a new quarterback in Geno Smith. You have one of the biggest running back talents we've ever seen coming out of college football since Barry Sanders, since Adrian Peterson at Oklahoma. I mean, you're talking about a backfield with Geno Smith and Ashton Jeanty that can be huge for this Raiders team. I mean, they're going to throw the ball better. They're going to run the ball better. They do have some weapons there. Brock Bowers is there. I mean, they got some playmakers there on this offense. And I like from the Brock Bowers and Ashton Jeanty perspective, when you talk about two young guys that are the core of this team, Brock Bowers, who is probably going to be the best tight end in the National Football League, and Ashton Jeanty, who has a chance to be the best running back in the National Football League. Those are two foundational pieces for the Raiders they're going to transform this team. You can't tell me they're not, because they're just too good. We know the caliber of player that Brock Bowers and Ashton Jeanty are. They're the real deal. Those guys are as blue chip as you can get. I mean, Brock Bowers has already proven it at the professional level. Ashton Jeanty, just off his build alone, I know the guy's going to be successful in the NFL. Just because, like, you see the guy, he's like a prototype running back. I mean, this guy looks like he was built in a laboratory. You know, you're looking for the ideal specimen running back, human being, detailed to perfection, the muscle composition, the amount of preparation he puts in to being great. Those things always translate, man. They always translate, because Ashton Jeanty is the type of guy that did the things that he needed to do to put him in a position to be successful. He didn't just show up hoping to be successful. He prepared himself and then expects to be successful. That's the difference between a great player and a player that has a chance at being a good player. The good player just shows up hoping to have success. Ashton Jeanty prepared, and knows he's going to have success. It's not up for debate, because he seized his moment. And in this Raiders offense, he's going to break off big chunks of yardage. The Raiders are going to be more balanced. He's going to be chopping away at teams. I feel bad for the other AFC West teams in this division. They let Ashton Jeanty go to the Raiders. The Raiders just gained a little bit of ground in this division because they just walked away with one of the best players in this whole entire draft. I mean, if we're being honest, I think Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty might be more of a lock than Cam Ward, who went number 1 overall. And I think Cam Ward is going to be a really good player. I'm high on Cam Ward. You know, there's a lot of people that think Cam Ward shouldn't be the number 1 overall pick. You know, he didn't earn it. He's not good enough. He's going to be a bust. I don't subscribe to that. I think Cam Ward's going to be a really good player, and I think he is good enough to go number 1. I see why the Titans took him number 1 overall, because I saw him at Washington State. I saw him at Miami. I know he throws I know he throws the football all over the place. And most importantly about Cam Ward, he plays his best football during crunch time. Late in the fourth quarter, when the pressure's on, Cam Ward gets better. So I'm high on Cam Ward, but I still think Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty might be a better prospect coming out of the draft than Cam Ward. Just because, how are these two players, Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty, not the biggest locks in this draft? You can't tell me otherwise. Those guys were on another level this past year in college football. They separated themselves by a wide margin from the pack. And was Cam Ward the best quarterback? Yeah, he was. Him and Shedeur Sanders were exceptional last year. But the gap between Travis Hunter and everybody else, the gap between Ashton Jeanty and everybody else, so big. So for the Raiders, Pete Carroll scores a big victory on draft night. Right away, you're already seeing the Pete Carroll effect. Comes in, becomes the head coach of this team, and right away, they're already getting better. Already, this team has a sense of direction. I think that's the biggest difference from last year with Antonio Pierce to this year with Pete Carroll. They already have a sense of direction. They already know what they have to do to be successful. Like for the longest time, people used to tell me running backs don't matter, and running backs became the forgotten position in the National Football League. I don't think that's the case at all. You look at what Saquon Barkley did for the Eagles. You always need those running backs that that can get that gritty, tough yardage. The guy that brings some physicality to your football team. Downhill running style. Instead of taking the hit, puts the hit on the linebacker a little bit and makes the linebacker start playing on their heels. The linebackers play on their heels because they don't want to tackle that guy. That's the type of player Ashton Jeanty is. He's going to run downhill. He's going to run to daylight. He's going to turn plays that should be 1 or 2 yard gains into first downs, 10-yard runs, 10-plus yard runs, 15, 20-yard runs. He's going to break big runs and, take it down the sideline all the way to the end zone. He just injects excitement into your football team. A bad football team is dull. They're boring to watch. A team that's really good, a great football team, they're exciting. They're making big plays. They capture lightning in a bottle. All those things can be traced back to Ashton Jeanty. Ashton Jeanty is good enough to do those things for the Raiders. You can't tell me otherwise. He's going to run all day for the Raiders. They're going to get play action with Geno Smith going. Brock Bowers is going to get it going over the middle. I like it. I like everything the Raiders are doing right now. I like all the decisions they've made this offseason. I like Tom Brady coming aboard. I like them hiring Pete Carroll. I like Ashton Jeanty. That's 3 victories in a row. Even going back last year to the old regime, I like the Brock Bowers pickup. So it's looking really good, man. I'm telling you, it's looking really good for this Raiders team. Ashton Jeanty is a workhorse that you can give 20 carries a game. 20 carries a game, just feed him, let him eat. He's going to do the down and dirty stuff for this Raiders team. And it's going to put this team in more favorable down and distances. Suddenly you're in second and short. Suddenly you're in, third and inches. It's a lot better than being in third and 10, third and 15 because of a penalty or a sack. Third and inches, quarterback sneak usually gets the job done. You just sneak it to Geno Smith, kind of run the tush push, your version of it. You get the first down. Good enough. Or you turn and hand the ball to Ashton Jeanty on inches, and guess what? It's almost guaranteed he's going to get those inches for you. I think he'll be good down in the red zone, especially near the goal line. You can expect the Raiders to be heavy run down by the goal line. Why? Why would you pass the ball down by the goal line? That's one of the things I hate about the current NFL. Teams are so much more likely to pass the ball down near the end zone in today's era. I don't think that's going to be the case with the Raiders, which is a good thing. You want the Raiders to play fundamental football, which means run the football, even if it's all 4 downs near the goal line. You go for it on 4th down. You run it first, second, third down, and guess what? On 4th down, you go for it and you run it again. That's fundamental football. People might say it's boring, but guess what? Your chances of scoring touchdowns are so much higher than passing it down on the goal line. And when you have the running back there to get the job done in Ashton Jeanty, guess what? I love handing the ball 4 times in a row down near the goal line to Ashton Jeanty, because guess what? If you give him 4 cracks at it, it's almost guaranteed he's getting 1. So I like the thought of the Raiders getting back to fundamental football, old school football, pounding the rock down near the goal line and saying, we're not going to pass it at all. We're just going to feed this first-round pick we got because he's the best running back we've seen in a long time. Give Ashton Jeanty the football and get the hell out of the way. That's going to be the Raiders' offense. And when it comes time, Geno Smith has the arm talent to throw the ball all over the place. And guess what? The Raiders are looking a lot better. Okay, moving on. Another story we got to talk about is Shedeur Sanders. So the big surprise of the night was Shedeur Sanders falling completely out of the first round. And this is a little surprising because I heard the Giants like Shedeur Sanders at number 2. they were interviewing Shedeur Sanders, doing their homework. There were reports that a lot of teams didn't like Shedeur Sanders in the interview process. Here, look, I'm pushing back on all this because we've seen this a lot with quarterbacks in the NFL. Look at Lamar Jackson, falls all the way to the 32nd overall pick. The Ravens actually had to trade up to get Lamar Jackson. So we've seen this before. But I don't think Shedeur Sanders deserved what happened to him last night. I think that was garbage from the NFL owners, the GMs, the front offices for saying, hey, we're going to teach Shedeur Sanders a lesson and we're going to not take him in the first round and, kind of try to embarrass him. Maybe they just felt like there was better players for their team. Who knows? But from Shedeur Sanders' perspective, I don't like it. I thought the guy was good enough to be a first-round pick. And all the people that are pounding the table and saying, see, this guy can't play, this guy's not good enough, I think that's nonsense. The guy can see the field. He can see the field. He can throw the football. He's not limited when it comes to his arm talent. And people saying he takes too much sacks. He didn't have a run game. He didn't have an offensive line. He still went out there and balled out for Colorado, laid it all on the line for that team. You're telling me that's not a guy you want on your team? I'll tell you what, I'll take Shedeur Sanders on my team any day of the week. I would draft him in a heartbeat. And I think any team that gets Shedeur Sanders is going to be lucky to have him. I don't believe that he's arrogant and cocky and full of himself. I see a guy that's confident, bold, that has, he's self-assured. Things that are going to help him in his career. Did those things that people are punishing Shedeur Sanders for, did those things hurt Deion Sanders in his career? No, those things are what made Deion Sanders one of the greatest football players of all time. I think it's going to be the same exact situation with Shedeur Sanders. I think his confidence is going to be a blessing for him. I think, him being confident and being self-assured, I think those things are going to make Shedeur Sanders a very good player at the professional level. So him falling out of the first round, I think a lot of teams, especially quarterback needy teams, missed out on a guy that could really help their football team. I don't know if that's a smart decision for those teams because, particularly I'm looking at the Giants who got Jackson Dart. I have Shedeur Sanders over Jackson Dart, and I know a lot of teams fell in love with Jackson Dart. I just saw more from Shedeur Sanders. When I watch Shedeur Sanders play and I watch Jackson Dart play, I come away being a little bit more sold on Shedeur Sanders. So that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Jackson Dart ends up being the better player and Jackson Dart is the guy all along. I personally don't see it that way. I had Shedeur Sanders over Jackson Dart. And I will say this, Nick Saban is also a firm believer in Shedeur Sanders. Nick Saban went on record and said he thinks Shedeur Sanders is a very good football player, and I'm right there with Nick Saban. So I think the guy got shortchanged last night. I think he needs to just take it all in stride. Don't take it to heart. Just be you, man. Play your game, and the rest will take care of itself. Don't, go on a revenge tour, and, you can think that way, but keep it inside. Don't publicly say, I'm going to make everybody regret that decision. Don't go out there and say, all these teams, 32 teams, made a mistake. Just go out there, be you, play your game. The rest will take care of itself because the guy can throw the football. The guy can see the field. Those are the most important things at the next level. We see so many one-read quarterbacks that can't get to their second or third progressions. I think Shedeur Sanders can get through his reads. If that first guy is covered, I think he can get to his second or third progression. And if those aren't there, I think he can swing it out to a check down. Those are the things it takes to be successful in the National Football League. I think he has the arm talent to throw it deep. Some people are saying he checks down too much. I'm telling you, the guy can play, man. He can play. He can throw the football. Very unfortunate to see what happened last night because he's better than that. He deserved it. Someone could have took him. He was worthy of being a first-round pick. There's nobody that can debate that with me. I think you're wrong if you feel otherwise. I think if you came on here and said, well, look what happened last night, obviously I'm right, I would say you're wrong. They just got it wrong. Was Lamar Jackson better than the 32nd overall pick? Well, he was the best player in all football last year. I don't care if Josh Allen won the MVP. Lamar Jackson was the best player in all football last year besides Saquon Barkley, the number one overall player. Or you could say 1A, 1B with him and Saquon Barkley. He went 32nd overall in the draft, and if it wasn't for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson would have fell to the second round. So, to me, this is just another example of that. Another guy that's going to have a chance to prove himself and prove that he does have what it takes to be a guy that is, a star player at this next level. I think the 32 teams that passed on him for whatever reason, whether it was interview process, whether they didn't like his personality, whether they thought it would come with the headache of dealing with Deion Sanders if they drafted him, whatever the reason, they're all wrong. They got it wrong. Shedeur Sanders can play. And whoever takes him on day 2, they're going to be really happy. Now, if you're a team that was holding out and praying to get him in the second round, you might have the chance of a lifetime here to get him in the second round because you got that first round pick off and you get Shedeur Sanders in the second round. That's a pretty strong draft if you ask me. If you get a first round pick, you hit on that first round pick, then you hit on Shedeur Sanders in the second round. The most important picks in these drafts are the first, second, third round. The further on you go down the draft board, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, those players typically aren't as impactful. Yeah, you can fill out your roster with those players and get some really good players, but you have to hit on your first rounders. You have to hit on your second rounders. The top of the draft are where the best players are at. And if you get the best of the best, then your team is going to start climbing the power rankings. So whoever gets Shedeur Sanders is going to have a chance to get a guy that can be their franchise quarterback. And if you can get a franchise quarterback in the second round, Drew Brees, I believe, was a second-round quarterback, went on to be one of the most prolific passers we've ever seen, came out of Purdue, went a little bit later than he'd hoped, went to the Chargers, went to the Saints after that, going to be a future Hall of Famer someday. So Shedeur Sanders might have to take a similar path that Drew Brees took, but that's just one example of what you can do if you are a second-round pick like it looks like Shedeur Sanders is going to be. Can still get to the Hall of Fame. I think Drew Brees is going to be there. So that's a path that Shedeur Sanders might be going down next. Okay. The next topic we're going to talk about is Emeka Egbuka. The Buccaneers took Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. He was a Buckeye. And I'm looking at the wide receivers that the Buccaneers have. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka. Man, that's a lot of firepower on the offensive side of the ball. A lot of firepower. I mean, they're going to be able to torch teams. Mike Evans, one of the best wide receivers we've ever seen. Chris Godwin has been exceptional for this Buccaneers team in that role for so long, opposite of Mike Evans. He's been good for so long for this team. Going back to when Tom Brady was there. I think even Jameis Winston played with those guys while he was there. Now, obviously, Baker Mayfield's at the helm for the Buccaneers, but Baker Mayfield has arm talent. The Bucs have been competitive with Baker Mayfield, with Mike Evans, with Chris Godwin. You add Emeka Egbuka, I mean, we're talking about a team that is just loaded, absolutely loaded with playmakers. They're going to be able to, disperse the football all over the place. I mean, how can you double Mike Evans when you have Godwin and Emeka Egbuka as the number 2 and number 3 options? They are stacked. This Buccaneers offense is stacked, man. And you have Todd Bowles, who's always been a great defensive mind. Todd Bowles is going to clamp down on teams because he's so good defensively. He's been good for so long at making adjustments, at game planning. He can handle things on the defense side of the ball. Now you stack the offense with this big 3 that they have at the wide receiver position, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka. I mean, they're going to be bombs away. They're going to be bombs away. And now defenses have to play too high. And now there's running lanes open for the running backs that they have on the Buccaneers. Wasn't it Bucky Irving? I mean, too high. You know, they're going to rush 4. There's going to be daylight and there's going to be running lanes there. Because how do you drop a safety down in the box and play 1 high? How do you play cover 0? You can't do that against these receivers. You can't do it with Baker Mayfield throwing to these guys. You're going to get burned. It's just not going to work. You got to play too high. You got to play cover 3. You got to play cover 4. You got to stay, you got to stay behind the play. You got to keep these wide receivers in front of you if you're the secondary. You can't let these receivers get behind you is what I'm trying to say. Because if, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka, Egbuka, if these guys start running free and getting separation, it's over. It's over for you. They're going to dominate. They're going to dominate, and there's nothing you can do to stop these guys because they're just too talented. You're not going to have that good of a secondary to be able to match up with these guys. It's just not going to happen. I'm telling you right now. You're outgunned. Before even stepping on the field, you're outgunned. I'm thinking about the Buccaneers' long-term plans. Eventually Mike Evans or Chris Godwin might have to leave the team because they're getting older. They're getting older. That's the reality of the situation. You got to start thinking about life after Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But man, until that time comes, and if you have all 3 guys on your roster, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, we're talking about one of the most potent offenses in the NFL because talent wins games. They're so talented at the wide receiver position. They have a really good quarterback with Baker Mayfield. They have a good offensive system. I just don't see it. I don't see teams stopping these guys. How? Emeka Egbuka, you want to know who the guy reminds me of? He reminds me of Anquan Bolden. And if Emeka Egbuka is shades of Anquan Bolden, even shades of Anquan Bolden, this is one of the biggest steals of the draft because he's got the big frame. He's strong. He can box out defenders. He's got a good catch radius. He always stepped up for the Buckeyes. I mean, the consistent success that he's had. There's so many things that this guy does well. Like I said, he reminds me of Anquan Bolden. Now, Anquan Bolden was so big, so fast, played so fluidly that if Emeka Egbuka can get anywhere near Anquan Bolden, we're seeing an offense that almost resembles that Cardinals offense when they had Larry Fitzgerald, Anquan Bolden, and the rest of those guys. This offense might be better. It might be better because you have Chris Godwin there too. Obviously, I got Larry Fitzgerald probably over Mike Evans, but it's really not that big of a gap. Mike Evans never had under 1,000 yards. I mean, the guy dominates. Year in and year out, dominates. But, Larry Fitz, you can make a case as a top 5 receiver all time. You could make that case, and I would say it's a valid case. So Mike Evans and Larry Fitzgerald are closer than people realize. Very, very close. And that's saying something because Larry Fitzgerald was absolutely amazing. Now, Emeka Egbuka, can he be Anquan Bolden in this scenario? If that ends up being close, and then the Bucs have Chris Godwin too, I would say that this Bucs team might be more talented than that Cardinals team that had those big-time playmakers. Pretty sure they went to a Super Bowl. So, to me, it's like, what a splash. What a splash for the Buccaneers to be able to come away with all this talent on the offensive side of the ball, with having Todd Bowles taking care of the defense. They're going to be dangerous. This is a dangerous football team, particularly on offense now with Baker Mayfield and all these weapons. Emeka Egbuka, a guy that is I mean, he's going to be really good in the red zone. We know that. Bigger receivers. And based off what I saw from him at Ohio State, going to be good in the red zone. He's going to be a tough matchup for anybody smaller. Any smaller corners. I mean, they're going to have a nightmare matching up with Emeka Egbuka. It's just not going to go their way. You're going to have to put a bigger, lankier, Richard Sherman type corner on him with the longer arms and probably someone that maybe can bump a little bit. But how are you going to bump Emeka Egbuka? Just because he's so big, man. He's a big guy, fluid in his route running, can make all the plays. It's looking good for the Buccaneers, man. It's looking good. If you're a Bucs fan, you have to feel like you were one of the big winners on night one of the NFL draft because you got closer to winning the Super Bowl. I think, everybody was talking about Luther Burden in this draft. I had Emeka Egbuka over Luther Burden the whole time. Everybody was high on Luther Burden. You weren't hearing too much about Emeka Egbuka, but I had Emeka Egbuka over Luther Burden the whole time. Now, he gets drafted in the first round. Luther Burden doesn't get taken, but we have talked about, how sometimes teams miss, Lamar Jackson 32 overall, Shedeur Sanders not going in the first round. But I still believe Emeka Egbuka was a superstar in the making, and I think Luther Burden is a role player that can provide some big plays, some big sparks for you in different moments. But I think Emeka Egbuka is a guy that can be a superstar in the National Football League. I really believe that. And then when you add in his interview process, everybody fell in love with this guy. Everybody said he was high character. He was a really good guy, a guy that had, just the right attitude towards life and the sport of football. Everybody was high on this guy throughout the interview process. They just believed he was a high character guy that if they bring in, he's going to make that locker room better. Stop and think about this for a minute. This guy has all the talent in the world on the football field. And he comes in, he's a leader too. He makes your locker room better. I mean, when you have a guy that checks both boxes, exceptional player, leader, high character, I put leader / high character in the same box. Exceptional player, box 1. Box 2, leadership / high character. He checks both those boxes. So not only that, he's making your team better morale-wise. He's making the game fun for everybody. He's positive. He builds other people up. He leads by example on and off the field. How can you sit here and tell me that the Bucs are not one of the biggest winners on night one of the draft? You can't do it because they hit the jackpot with Emeka Egbuka, and that is a player that all 32 teams wanted on their roster. Luckily for the Buccaneers, they were able to pull it off. I think that's going to make a big impact for this franchise for years to come. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Football Game Tonight podcast. I'm your host, John Kuzma. This was the NFL Draft Recap Edition. Check us out wherever podcasts are found. Spotify, YouTube, Pandora, the whole works. If you can find a podcast there, you can look up Football Game Tonight, Amazon Music. And if you want to be a member of the show and get access to our past episodes, you can click the link in the episode description box and become a member. It's $1 per month, $12 a year to support this show. Also, if you're an advertiser and want to place an ad on the Football Game Tonight podcast, you can email us at footballgametonight@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much. I'm John Kuzma. I'm signing off.